Lloyd wiped the blood and mud from his face with a sleeve. As had been a recurring theme throughout his life, Melvin Turner had beaten the crap out of him again. Melvin had been Lloyd's nemesis ever since they were little boys, but it wasn't much of a rivalry. Melvin had always been bigger, stronger, more confident, and not above giving Lloyd a wedgie, clipping him in the lunch line or tossing him into a dumpster. But that was the past, or so Lloyd thought. He was a freshman at the university now and supposedly free of Melvin forever. But earlier that day Melvin appeared out of nowhere. He'd transferred in. At first Melvin seemed more like a normal person, like some old chum. Then a short while ago, he'd bumped into Melvin literally. Melvin responded by shoving Lloyd face first into a puddle of mud. Lloyd was washing up in the bathroom of the Commons building when he felt someone watching him. He turned and saw an immaculately dressed woman leaning on a black lace umbrella. "Who are you?" said Lloyd. "I'm here to help." Lloyd wiped mud from his chin. "And why would you want to do that?" The woman sauntered over to him, twirling her umbrella. "Because I stand for everything good in the world. Justice. Fair play. Love." The woman tapped Lloyd's chin with the tip of the umbrella. "It's time we turned the tables on your friend, Melvin." "How do you know about him?" said Lloyd. "Trifles." "Here, take this," said the woman. "A rock?" The woman reached into the small leather that hung near her waist and handed Lloyd jagged, gray rock. Not a rock, but an ancient stone imbued with special properties. Lloyd turned the little stone over in his hand and examined it. It was very porous, like the kind of rocks found on the moon. "With it you can have your heart's desire." Lloyd looked around suspiciously. "Are you playing me? This is another of Melvin's tricks, isn't it?" "When have you ever known Melvin employ tricks?" said the woman. Lloyd thought about it. It was true. Melvin was more of the brute force type. "Exactly," said the woman. Lloyd looked at the woman suspiciously. Who are you?" "It doesn't matter. Just remember that the stone will do whatever you ask of it, provided Melvin is your target." Suddenly, Lloyd felt the urge to rub his eyes. When he opened them, the woman was gone. Lloyd squeezed the stone in his palm. "A revenge rock, huh? Let's see if you're any good." Lloyd found Melvin at a pool table in the Commons. Melvin was playing against two other guys as a group of attractive girls looked on. Melvin was apparently an ace player since the balls always went where he wanted them to. Melvin leaned over the table to take a shot. Lloyd, from his spot in a dark corner of the room, fondled the stone in his hand. "If this doesn't work, I'm going to feel mighty stupid," he thought. He squeezed the stone. "I wish Melvin would miss this shot." Melvin pulled his arm back and thrust the pool cue forward. He missed the balls completely. One of the girls snickered. Melvin looked around, his face red. Lloyd was having a hard time keeping his own laughter quiet. Lloyd watched as one of the other players lined up a shot. Lloyd squeezed the rock again. Melvin passed gas loudly. The other guy missed his shot. The room exploded in laughter. "You trying to make me look stupid in front of my girl?" Melvin was a big guy, but the other guy had plenty of friends with him. I wonder what would happen if Melvin said yes, though Lloyd. "Yes, I am," said Melvin. He looked around as if he couldn't believe the words coming from his mouth. The other guy punched Melvin in the stomach. Because one of the other spectators had kneeled behind Melvin's knees, Melvin tripped and fell flat on his butt. Lloyd hurried outside to the parking lot so that he could laugh as hard and loud as he wanted. After several moments of this, he realized he was being watched. It was Melvin walking toward him, and he looked very, very angry. "You little punk," he said, approaching quickly. "You're behind what happened in there, I know it." Lloyd backed away from Melvin. Melvin grabbed him by the collar. Lloyd struggled to get free. He wished that he were larger and stronger than Melvin for a change. Suddenly, Melvin let go. Somehow, Melvin had shrunk. But as Lloyd watched Melvin tug at his now oversized clothes, it dawned on him that Melvin wasn't just smaller. He was younger too. "You did this to me," said Melvin. "How?" "The stone," thought Lloyd. "I wished that I were bigger, but somehow the stone had changed Melvin instead." Lloyd remembered what the strange woman had said about Melvin being the target of his wishes. For all intents and purposes, Melvin looked like a 12-year-old boy again. Lloyd smiled. "I don't know how you did this, but I'm still going to kill you," said Melvin, reaching for Lloyd. Lloyd couldn't help but notice that his voice was that of a 12-year-old. Lloyd continued backing away. He was slightly ashamed that he was still undeniably afraid of the now skinnier, weaker Melvin. But Lloyd remembered very well how mean Melvin was at that age. Lloyd nervously squeezed the stone. "I wish that I were much bigger and stronger than Melvin," he said. Suddenly, Melvin shrunk again, becoming even younger. He was absolutely swimming his t-shirt and his pants pulled around his ankles. He couldn't have been much older than 7 or 8. Melvin looked at himself in awe. A sound escaped his lips like a whimper. He looked like he wanted to cry. "You bastard," he screamed. "Turn me back!" Melvin tried to run at Lloyd, but Lloyd held him at a distance with one hand. Lloyd chuckled. "Oh, Melvin. Don't be such a little girl." Suddenly, Lloyd had an idea and smiled. "On second thought, I wish you were a little girl." Melvin quickly transformed again. He grew slightly smaller as his hair grew out. Lloyd wished that Melvin had on the most embarrassing clothes he could think of. Suddenly, Melvin was wearing a frilly pink princess dress with pink patent shoes. His hair was done in pigtails with ribbons. Melvin actually began to cry. Lloyd found that he could not stop laughing. He stumbled backward into the street. He was laughing so hard that he never saw the small delivery truck before it hit him. When Lloyd woke up, he found himself laying in a hospital bed. The room was quiet except for the television playing from the wall. Then he noticed the little girl sitting in the overly large chair next to his bed, fiddling with the television remote. The girl looked at him. "Oh, you're awake," she said. "Melvin," mumbled Lloyd. "What happened?" Lloyd cleared his throat. His voice sounded strange to his ears. "You don't remember anything, do you?" Melvin hopped out of the chair. He had to drop several inches to find the floor. He had to stand on his tiptoes to be seen over the side of the bed. "You were hit by a parcel truck and brought here by ambulance. You almost didn't make it." Melvin twisted his pigtail. "You were out for 3 days." Lloyd sat up to get a better look at himself. "But it finally dawned on me that I could make a wish to make you better." Melvin's little girl voice was completely at odds with the look of hate on his face. "And I could make a wish to get back at you for what you did to me." Lloyd's hands were smaller and more delicate, and his chest didn't seem to want to fall as much as it should have. "The stone," said Lloyd, jumping from the bed. "You made me into a girl." That's right. You didn't realize how powerful this thing is, said Melvin, holding the stone between his fingers. I brought you back to life and gave you a new identity. Everyone thinks your name is Lauren. But for some reason it doesn't work on me. I couldn't change myself, so I'd lied and told them I'm your little sister. Lloyd was starting to hyperventilate. Turn me back. Give me back the stone. I wish you would freeze right there. Lloyd was stuck in place and screaming inside. You shouldn't have messed with me, loser. Now that the shoe is on the other foot, I'm going to make your life a living hell. As Lloyd followed Melvin's tiny body to the parking lot, he had no doubt that he was telling truth. On the one hand, Melvin had indeed healed him completely. On the other hand, his body had been morphed into that of a pretty, petite girl. The body itself wasn't that outrageous. Catching a glimpse of his new reflection in plate glass, he guessed that he looked his normal age, but he was definitely skinnier. He had been pretty skinny to start with, 5 feet 8 inches 145 pounds. Yet, he's sure that he had lost at least 20 pounds. He thought he was probably about the same height, but his arms and legs were thinner. Of course, this ignored the more obvious changes he was trying not to notice: the long, silky hair, the cute face that somewhat resembled his own, and that weird void between his legs. Lloyd had no doubt Melvin was doing his best to embarrass him. He had wished up a girly set of clothes for Lloyd. Lloyd was walking in a spaghetti-strap tank top, short jean shorts, and 2.5-inch platform sandals. The sandals were not easy to walk in. He found himself moving very slowly and wobbling with each step. Lloyd realized that he must have been shorter than he thought. But the most embarrassing thing was his chest. Melvin had not given him large breasts, thankfully. Yet, the nipples were another story. They caused the fabric of his top to tent out. Looking down at himself, it looked like bees had stung his chest. Distracted by his nipples, Lloyd stumbled into Melvin, nearly knocking him down. Watch where you're going, you clumsy slut, said Melvin. The word sounded strange coming from a 7-year-old girl. Get in, he said, pointing at a pickup truck with large tires that lifted it high above the ground. Where did this come from? It's my truck. I wished for it to be here. Lloyd watched Melvin try to climb in, but the opening was too high. Lloyd tried to help. Get your hands off of me. Melvin shrugged away from Lloyd. Lloyd saw Melvin pull out the stone and the truck changed to a small 2-door car. They both got in. Where are we going? Said Lloyd cautiously. To the mall, said Melvin. At the mall, Lloyd felt even more self-conscious. Everyone was staring at him and he felt almost naked as the air conditioning blew over his bare shoulders, chest, and legs. Here we are, said Melvin. Melvin had brought him to a beauty salon. I'm not going in there, Lloyd said. Suddenly, Lloyd couldn't breathe. He brought his hands up to his face and realized what was wrong. His mouth and nose were gone. Now you listen to me, Lloyd. I've made it so that you can't breathe just to show you who is in charge. Lloyd clutched his throat. He was on the verge of passing out. Do you understand? You will do as I say. Nod if you understand, because you're turning blue. Lloyd nodded his head fervently. Melvin returned Lloyd to normal. A short while later, Lloyd was sitting in the beautician's chair. Melvin had forced him to tell her a story. I think it's so nice that you're letting your little sister choose a new look for you. Melvin had spent a while clipping pictures from magazines, lips, eyes, hairstyles, etc. Are you sure this is the look you want? The beautician whispered. Lloyd looked at Melvin, who smiled cheerily at him and giggled. Lloyd nodded nervously and the woman went to work. 3 hours later, Lloyd found himself staring into a large oval mirror held by the beautician. Well, what do you think? She asked. The girl in the mirror was a knockout. She had large blue eyes, high cheekbones accented by rouge, thin arched eyebrows, and cute, juicy red lips. He had to admit, he looked like a beautiful young woman. But that was the problem. He looked like a beautiful young woman. She likes it, said Melvin. Don't you, Lauren? It looks really nice, said Melvin. A short while later, they were in the food court seated at a table. Melvin was licking a strawberry ice cream cone, while Lloyd refused to touch the hamburger in front of him. This is really good. You know, I think ice cream tastes better after what you did to me, said Melvin. Must be a kid thing. He continued, don't look so sad. You're so popular with the guys now. You should be happy, Lauren. Don't call me that, said Lloyd. Why not, said Melvin. It's a pretty name and it fits a lot better than Lloyd, doesn't it? Lloyd looked down at his untouched burger. Why the long face, sis? Okay. I tell you what I'll do to make things easier. I wish that you could only call yourself Lauren. What? Said Lauren. Okay. Now, what is your name? Lauren thought about it for a minute. She knew that for most of her life her name had been Lloyd. But every time she tried to say it, Lauren almost came out. Come on, just say it, said Melvin. My name is Lauren. Lauren put a hand over his mouth. Wow. I didn't think that would work, said Melvin. If I can mess with your mind, I wonder what else I can make you do. The thought made Lauren want to scream. When Lauren opened his eyes, he was seated at a desk in algebra class. He felt as if he had just woken from a dream. All right, class, said Professor Logstram. That's all for today. Everyone cleared out of the room and Lauren sat for several minutes before he got up and started for the door. He was nearly to the door when he saw someone waiting just outside the doorway. Melvin? Said Lauren. It was Melvin, and he wasn't a little girl any longer. He was back to normal. How? Melvin smiled. Lauren noticed that something was different about Melvin. He seemed much larger and more muscular. This stone is more powerful than I thought, said Lauren. I spent a lot of time thinking about what I could with this. Melvin stepped into the room and sat on the professor's desk. You haven't even noticed, have you? He asked. Noticed what? Melvin motioned for Lauren to look at himself. Lauren did and saw that his body was back to normal. He was wearing the same jean and button-down shirt he had on the day he got the stone. I don't understand, he said. I'll explain, but first, what is your name? Lauren. Lauren paused. It didn't make any sense, but every time he tried to think of his real name, Lauren kept popping up. Now jump on one leg and meow like a cat. Lauren did it. Melvin laughed. That's pretty funny. Melvin laughed so hard he had to stop to catch his breath. Okay, stop. I guess you're wondering what I did. The stone lets me ask for just about anything I want. I wished that you would only do what I told you. I gave you the stone and told you change me back to my old self. Then I turned you back to normal. Then I had you give me a little extra. He said, flexing his bulging biceps. The stone is in your pocket, Melvin said. Give it to me. As Lauren pulled the stone out, his mind was screaming, don't give it back to him. With all of his heart, he tried not to give Melvin the stone. His arm was shaking with the effort of his resistance, but slowly his hand moved closer to Melvin's hand. Melvin opened his hand and Lauren placed the stone in his palm. Lauren was shivering with fear. What are you going to do to me? Said Lauren. Melvin smiled again. Nothing, yet. Days passed and then weeks. Lauren went to school as if nothing ever happened. Life seemed completely normal except for the fact that he couldn't stop calling himself Lauren. The really weird thing was that everyone else did too and they found it perfectly normal. No one questioned it. No one gave him a strange look. From time to time he would see Melvin who would just leer at him menacingly, but nothing happened. Then one day while he was at the park lying on the knolls with friends from the university, he noticed something. I'm wearing a dress, he thought. And he was. It was a yellow flowered dress with a scoop neck. He scrambled to his feet and looked down at his body. What's the matter, Lauren? Said Ed, his roommate who played the keyboard with other friends from school. You don't see anything wrong with this? Said Lauren. With what? Said Gary, the cricket player. This dress I'm wearing. It's all wrong, Lauren said. I think it's a pretty one, said Tanya. Lauren excused himself and rushed to the restroom at the park shelter. How is this possible that no one sees this as odd? He said, pulling the shoulder straps. A quick inspection revealed that he was still completely male. In fact, nothing seemed to have changed about his body at all. Yet, he saw that he was wearing cutesy flip-flop sandals with little flowers on them that matched his dress. That afternoon Lauren was at wit's end. When he arrived back at his dorm room, he found that most of his clothes had been replaced with girl clothes. He picked out a pair of loose-fitting jeans and a shirt, nearly the only clothes that hadn't changed, and set out for the store. He knew this was Melvin's doing and he wasn't going to take it laying down. Lauren didn't have much money, but he had to buy whatever he could afford. He bought a couple of pairs of jeans and tennis shoes and shirts. Anything that said, I am a guy. As walked out of the store, he felt a breeze on his legs and realized that he was wearing tight, cut-off cotton shorts and a skimpy blouse with feminine frilly short sleeves. He hurried back to his room with his clothes, which had all changed, and cried himself to sleep. More time passed with this as the state of affairs. He spent every day wearing girls' clothes. On the rare occasion he bought something new, it would transform when he wasn't looking. He even tried to trick whatever was happening once by buying a girl's outfit, but it didn't change. Lauren tried desperately to find Melvin, but they never came across each other and he didn't know how to find him. The holiday season came and Lauren went home for the break. He was in his old room when Melvin appeared suddenly out of nowhere. If he was taller and more muscular before, now he was positively gigantic. He guessed that Melvin was nearly 7 feet tall and 200 pounds heavier than normal. All of it muscle. "My, don't you look sweet?" Melvin said. Lauren was wearing cropped tights and a sports bra. He didn't need the bra because he didn't have breasts, but when he tried to go to the gym in only tights and a t-shirt, the bra had appeared on him from thin air. This was a normal occurrence. Bras appeared on him all the time these days. "You bastard," said Lauren. "Keep your voice down. You wouldn't want anyone to know I'm here. I wouldn't want anyone to get hurt." Lauren was extremely angry, but the thought of Melvin doing something to his family made his keep quiet. "Why don't you stop this?" "I can't." "Why?" Because I'm having too much fun. Why do all of the clothes have to be so girly? You're right. Your body doesn't exactly match the great clothes I've given you, and that's just wrong, isn't it? Maybe I can fix that. The next day Lauren met up with Tanya at Starbucks for coffee. The truth was that Lauren had always had a crush on Tanya. Of course, Lauren was wearing a pleated skirt and silk blouse, which made him extremely self-conscious. I had such a hard time in acting this past quarter, and I have the same professor in my next class. Lauren reached across the table and grabbed Tanya's hand. You're a great actress, said Lauren. Keep your chin up and you'll do fine. Thank you, Lauren. You always know what to say. Well, I'm just, said Lauren, noticing his hand. What? Said Tanya. What is it? Lauren stood up. I'm sorry, Tanya, I'm not feeling well. Lauren walked away. The reason Lauren was not feeling well had to do with his hands. As he caught the metro home, he stared at them. They had changed completely. They had become dainty and slender, and the fingernails were painted a light peach. At home, Lauren snuck into his parents' bathroom and found the nail polish remover. He made a mess in his bedroom using it, but was pleased with the results once he clipped the nails. Lauren went downstairs in his cut-off tank top with the Hello Kitty emblem to get a glass of water. As he poured the glass, he noticed with shock that the nails had grown back and were once again covered in polish. He spent the night in his room cowering under the covers. The next morning Lauren had breakfast in his room. He was extremely nervous. He couldn't tell if anything else had changed. It didn't look like it. The nails were still there. He found it a little more difficult to do simple things like wash himself in the shower or tie his robe, but everything else seemed normal. After breakfast, he got dressed. But when he was putting on his tennis, he realized that something had changed. His feet were much smaller. So small, in fact, that even when he tied them extra tight, he was able to pull them right off. His toenails also matched his fingernails. Lauren searched the room for another pair and found a pair of crepe-soled shoes under the bed. The label said they were size 4s. The following days continued in this vein. Lauren would wake up and inspect himself carefully for changes. Some days they were obvious, such as when he woke up to find that his hair had grown down to his shoulder blades and lightened to honey blonde. Other days he couldn't tell what had changed, such as when late one night before he realized that not only had his skin gotten smoother and softer, but nearly all of his body hair had fallen out. His skin felt like silk. Then things started to get truly weird. Lauren was halfway through drinking a diet soda pop when he felt the strangest sensation in his midsection, like someone was hugging his stomach tightly. He pulled up his pink t-shirt and realized what had happened. His waist had shrunk by inches. He had always pretty thin, but now his waist curved inward from every angle. Later that same day he tripped and fell flat on his buttocks. He did this at a video store where he knew a few of the workers. They helped him to his feet. Through the embarrassment and tingling of his, but he didn't feel the change at first, but as he walked home something seemed off. That's when he caught his reflection in a storefront. His hips and behind had flared out somewhat. He turned around, viewing his shape in the reflection. The blue gym shorts he wore showed off the change to good effect. His butt was nowhere near huge. In fact, it generally fit in with the slenderness of his body, but it was pronounced enough that there was no denying it was female. This was when Lauren decided to look for help. He searched the internet for days as the changes continued. His nose became cuter. His eyes turned blue. His jawline and brow became more delicate. Finally, he found a mystic, a Madame Belle Casita, who lived not far from him. The madam was a quack. "I am not a quack," said the madam, sprinkling talcum powder across the floor. "Talc is a natural defensor against the dark." The old, small woman waved her hands in front of Lauren. "Wow. This Melvin really did a number on you. Mental and physical gender confusion. You're embarrassed. You're afraid. It must be terrible." "It is," said Lauren, fighting to hold in his emotions. The truth was that there was little left of his old body. Looking at his dainty hands, he realized that by Christmas Day, he would be completely female. "Can you help me?" "Of course, I can, child. For I am Madame Belle Casita. Hold still. This won't take long." She began an incantation and shortly her body began to shake. Lauren wondered if this were normal. Suddenly, the shaking turned into violent convulsions. Lauren stood up to help the madam, but Lauren began to feel oddly. Lauren sat back down and the madam fell out of her chair, dead. "Ha, ha," laughed a monstrous voice from across the parlor. Lauren didn't have to look to know who it was. You killed her." "She was scheduled to die soon anyway," said Melvin, who was nearly 8 feet of bulging, contorted muscle. His teeth were long and razor-like and his skin had a reddish glow to it. Melvin reached out and grabbed Lauren by the waist with one hand. "You didn't really think I was going to let some gypsy troll ruin my fun, did ya?" Melvin touched Lauren's throat and suddenly it felt as if he had eaten a pack of mints. His throat felt tingly. "Why are you doing this?" said Lauren. He could hear that his voice was now soft and girlish. "You really don't remember, do you?" "Remember what?" "When we were small you would make fun of me. You were always smarter and you made sure that everyone knew it. I developed a complex. I never believed in myself until one day this woman showed up and told me that you would get yours, but first you would have to try to get revenge on me with the stone." "My revenge rock," said Lauren. "It's a passive-aggressive thing. Your righteous anger activated it." "You mean this was all a trap?" Melvin put Lauren down. "I was chosen by the great trickster to be the guardian of the stone. It and I are one and I get to wreak havoc. It's my job." "You mean, you'll do to others what you did to me?" "Yep." Melvin gave Lauren a vial of purple liquid. "What is it?" "I have started a process inside your body. If you want to stop it, drink the vial. But know that drinking it will complete the transformation. It stinks, doesn't it? Goodbye." "Wait, Melvin. I'm not Melvin anymore. I'm Melforcius." And he was gone. 2 weeks later, Lauren was back at school and he had started to have memories. He would be sitting in class or in the commons and he would have a flashback about playing with his Barbie dolls or the summer he got his first period at summer camp. Of course, none of these things ever happened to him, but it was getting so that he couldn't tell the difference. The new memories were starting to overtake his old ones. For instance, he had only gone to camp once and knew that the summer ended with him developing a crush on a girl named Karen and breaking an arm while playing football, not with him kissing a boy named Jack and later that night finding his underwear all bloody. And the memories themselves seemed to change as the days passed. His recollection of Jack went from a strong crush to a kiss to Jack feeling Lauren up by the boathouse. Lauren's other memories changed in similar way. But there were other things too. His clothes were changing. Before the break, he would have described himself as a cute girl who wore cute girl clothes. But the clothing became more daring and provocative. The skirts became shorter and more of his shirts were midriff-bearing. When he dressed, he found himself automatically putting on makeup and doing his hair in a provocative manner. And there were more things he didn't even notice. That morning, as he descended the steps from art history, he caught a glimpse of his feet. He was wearing 3-inch heels. I didn't even notice them, he thought to himself. How could I go teetering about without noticing them? Lauren wondered what else he hadn't noticed. He made a list of all the things that had changed about him since he last saw Melvin. He had lost some height, although he couldn't tell how much because he couldn't recall his old height. All he knew was that he was now 5 feet 2 inches. His lips had turned more delicate. His nipples had grown. Then he looked at when each change had happened. The changes seemed to have stopped over a week ago. Then it hit him. Nipples! He had breasts. Large ones. Lauren concentrated and thought back over the past few days. Everywhere he went, boys stared at him, and it had only gotten worse each day. The breasts were growing. He couldn't be sure because his memory told him that he had always had DD breasts. At least since shortly after he hit puberty. But he knew this wasn't right. The next morning, as Lauren prepared for class before the vanity, he looked down at his low-cut halter that showed an impressive amount of cleavage. Melvin had said that drinking the vial would stop the changes. He wasn't positive, but he had the impression that he had not always been an E-cup. Such large breasts on his petite 5 feet 1 inch frame must have been the work of Melvin. Was he really considering taking the drink? Despite all of the other changes, he still had his penis, though it was quite small now. Drinking the vial would complete the transformation. Lauren thought about the summer at camp when he had taken his top off and let Jack and his friends feel him up. He knew that this memory was worse than it had been. Did he really let Melvin turn him into a slut? He knew that that would happen if he did not drink the vial soon. Lauren sat on his bed with his legs crossed and removed the vial from his purse. He removed the cap from the vial and drank, feeling a warmth spread through his midsection.